Well, but that's the issue, is that caring for someone or for a group of people is a very complicated thing. And it doesn't always mean be compassionate and feel sorry for them because they're downtrodden. It's not good enough. Like a lot of the structures that we've put in place to help people over the long run are rather harsh in their operations in the short term. I mean, so the values that are associated with trait conscientiousness, for example, which are reasonably good predictors of more conservative-leaning political belief, aren't warm, fuzzy virtues. They're cold, hard, judgmental virtues. They're the demands for performance, for example, that go along in the workplace. But if you want to take care of an infant who's crying, you want warm, instantaneous, impulsive compassion. Because there's a problem and it needs to be solved right now, and you have the solution. Right? The baby's too hot, the baby's too cold, the baby needs to be fed. You can fix that right now. If you're dealing with systemic problems of poverty, for example, or trying to determine how to produce more opportunity for everyone to benefit from everyone's abilities, you have to use a hell of a lot more than compassion to get there. And so to think of community in the positive sense as being driven by nothing but empathy, which is really one of the central arguments of the postmodern types, at least that's what's driving some of their argumentation, is it's an absurd proposition. And so it's not so much that they confuse the two things, is that they fail to differentiate the concepts to begin with. It's very, very difficult to build functional structures that help people thrive individually and socially over long periods of time. And merely being empathetic, man, that's just going to get you nowhere. A 3-year-old is empathetic. And I'm not dismissing that. Empathy is important, but as a problem-solving mechanism, it has very, very limited utility.
Yeah. Well, this brings me back to, you talked briefly about, National Socialism, fascism, and collectivism. The difference being, from my understanding, fascism was made to control the individual, Marxism was more control of means of production, socialism more means of controlling the fruits of production, if I'm not mistaken. And I think we've seen the destructive nature of collectivism in destroying the individual, right?
Well, I think that's actually the point in large part. I mean, Derrida, for example, coined a term he called phallogocentrism, which he regarded as the central axiomatic position of the West. That not only the Enlightenment West, but also the Christian, or Judeo-Christian for that matter, West prior to the Enlightenment. Derrida went after the tradition running through Judeo-Christianity, through modernism and the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and criticized that. And that was the idea that, and he was critical of this, it's the presupposition that culture is first male-dominated, which is a presupposition that I take great exception to because it's a radical oversimplification of the historical story. To the degree that culture was male-dominated, it was only dominated by a very small number of males. Most males were serfs or soldiers or cannon fodder, for that matter, or coal miners dreadfully toiling away for their work. Certainly as oppressed as women were in general by the absolute poverty of the conditions. Up till 1895, the average person in the Western world lived on $1 a day in today's money. Right, so I mean, you don't have to go back very far in time before you find everyone oppressed, but not by the socio-cultural system, merely by the absolute, insane difficulty of life itself. Well, so Derrida described the West as male-dominated, which I think is something to take serious issue with as a blatant claim. It's not differentiated enough or sophisticated enough. And he also said it was logos-centric. And that partly means logic, but there's a deeper meaning to logos, because logos is also the second person of the Christian Trinity. And Derrida knew that perfectly well. And so his criticism, Derrida was a smart man, make no mistake about it, and lots of the things he said were correct. Like, one of the propositions he laid forth was that there is a near infinite number of ways of interpreting any situation or any text, which happens to be technically true. And that's been discovered in all sorts of fields, including artificial intelligence. So the central claim that he begins with is actually true. And it's not surprising that it had such a powerful effect on the humanities, because it's actually an extraordinarily powerful and undermining idea. But he took it much far. He took that idea in directions that I don't think it should have gone in at all. But the logocentric idea is his criticism of the idea of the logocentric society is a deep criticism of the idea that the individual as a speaking force, as a communicative force, is the appropriate highest value upon which a culture should be built. He took that apart and criticized it. And so that's a deeper criticism, I would say, even than Marx's criticism, which was mostly about unequal power relationships. Derrida went deeper than that. And the postmodernists that occupy the universities are anti-individual right down to the bedrock. And so that's partly why they push collectivism to such a degree. They don't give a damn who you are. They care what your group identity is. And that's that.